back, Nigel.
We
Although we didn't really go away.
No.
Everyone's allowed a break. We're not AI.
Well, you had to go and travel the world and teach them about AI.
That's true. I was in Hong Kong. But we are back, even though people thought we might not be back, but we are. We didn't really go anywhere. And we're going to start today with quite an interesting one. AI should be for the workers, the Times.com story. So what's the gist of what they're trying to say?
Well, you remember a couple of times during the previous Substacks, Justin, we talked about
Season 1, I like to call
Season 1. We talked about how the news media is said to be turning on AI and suggesting that it was overhyped and people would get away from it. There now seems to be general agreement, and if you look at surveys that are coming out, that more and more people are actually dipping into AI. But what the Time article this week suggests is that as it becomes that daily work tool, people will become so reliant on it, or are becoming so reliant. The real risk may be not losing our intelligence, but losing confidence in our own thinking.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So tell me more about that, because that's a little different from some of the other ways I've heard about the dumbification of humans by AI.
Well, they're
losing confidence.
Yeah, so there was a study of, I mean, it's 2000 working adults. You always have to be a bit careful about small time studies, but
2000 is still a pretty good
well, the researchers found that people who relied heavily on AI, especially those who accepted the answers without much modification, are more likely to say that the tools they're using, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, were actually doing the thinking for them. And they reported lower confidence in their own reasoning and a weaker sense of ownership over their ideas. So, in other words, and I have actually seen this from some people that I know are using heavily AI now, even though they were skeptical at first. Their default is to go to AI and rather than actually think, look, I'm really good at being able to write a report, or I can compose this, or this is an email or a social post that I'm quite capable because I've been doing this for a long time. Their default is simply to go to ChatGPT or whatever, and then they're now thinking that actually it's so good. They think the results are so good that they get that they're losing a confidence in the fact that they can do it themselves.
Yeah, okay, that's quite interesting, because there is this whole game now that we could probably at the moment is being talked about as hybrid intelligence, as if we were to put some sort of moniker on it. The idea that you're now engaging in activities where you are collaborating with the AI tool sets in ways that create a hybrid intelligence. So the combinedness of that is the hybridity of the outcomes. And I think that's quite exciting. I think that's very interesting. I'm actually quite big on the idea of these hybrid intelligence substrates or layers, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, the idea that one becomes more dominant than the other, or that people start to be eroded in their confidence, that's a bit of a concern.
Well, the distinction the study points out is between engaging with AI thoughtfully. Here are my thoughts. This is what do I do? This is my first take of the report. Can you tweak it? Can you make it better? Or the social post. So the difference between engaging in that way or deferring to it. And I have noticed that more and more people I talk to
is the deferral
are simply, oh, look, AI, I need to do a social post about blah, blah, blah. And it creates it and they pick it up and go with it. And it's interesting because I've noticed on LinkedIn in the last couple of weeks, a number of recruitment people are saying that they are getting really annoyed with the fact that they can tell that the entire stuff that they're getting through for CVs and cover stories, especially cover letters, are entirely AI, and they don't think that people are actually expressing anything of their own thoughts.
Yeah, Okay. I mean, I think this is going to be a sort of zigzag sawtooth change where things will go up and down. I mean, again, it's easy to jump to the whole worry about it. Also, one could argue, if you were to be cynical, that all that stuff's already pretty trite. Does it matter that it's more trite?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that it's all going to be run by AI and everything's produced by AI not only is great for the people that support the dead internet theory, but also it's like, well, doesn't matter. I mean, one could argue, as long as communication is still occurring in an effective way, who cares if it's a machine or a human writing it? Having said that, I take your point around their concerns around deferral and where, because this really raises this constant thing that's becoming quite a part of the talk out there, and almost a term that is, becoming quite common, and that's you may have heard of it, the human in the loop. And human in the loop is all about us recognizing AI systems are growing in their access and their ways of doing things. But we need to continue to make sure that in any of these growth factors of AI or usages, that there's a human involved. And that human in the loop can be different actors. It could be this thing where you're saying where they should be still engaging with critical thinking.
Yes.
Or it can actually be the more important thing sometimes, with the human in the loop should be the one who makes the final call.
Yeah.
And you're saying that, and I think that's what this is referring to, actually. It's the canary in the cage that we need to be aware of, that giving up human in the loop is not a great idea.
No. Well, I think if you think about in some of the experiences of the internet, especially in the kind of early day, but even now, some people go to Google and they pick the first result and they don't actually,
That's right. They don't look.
they don't actually think, well, maybe this may be not the answer, or maybe this is someone's opinion on something. Or even now they go and get the Meta AI version, which may or may not be the whole picture or the complete picture. So the difference here is what I've seen you do all the time with AI, which is very impressive, is that you don't just accept the first thing it throws at you, but you actually push back and you challenge the answer, or you try to get it closer to what you're trying to do and you're thinking. So you're not just accepting it and cutting and pasting. You're actually saying to, no, I really want this. I see you do this all the time, or else, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this. So you're engaging with it and you're challenging it and you're talking to it as if it is a human in a way that is trying to solve a problem for you. Whereas what this is saying is people are now becoming lazy and they're simply, oh, okay, that's the answer. That's my cover letter. I'll cut and paste and put in without thinking that actually you could do a better job or you could tweak it.
But it's hard to push back when you've lost your confidence, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is the
That's
crux
true.
of it. So
That's true.
for all of that, maybe that's the problem. You've lost your confidence, and you don't have any confidence in what you're actually engaging with. Hard to push back on that.
That is true.
Gen Z's turning their back on AI.
According to surveys, again, that they certainly are.
And that is like, you mean are they turning their backs? Or is AI turning its back on them? Because they're the ones losing all the jobs, aren't they?
Well, that's right. But the survey suggests that the more these young people, and what are we talking about, 14 to 29, more people engage with the technology, the worse they feel about it.
Well, you mean they get more and more worried about their capacity to compete in a market, or?
Well, they're no longer excited about it. They don't feel they necessarily use it according to this. And also, while they believe that there could be some sort of future opportunities for them in the technology, they don't trust the systems surrounding it to let them benefit. And part of this, it claims, is that universities and schools have discouraged them from using AI. So
Okay.
they're not prepared to use it, and nor are they confident about using it.
I think Generation Z's got concerns because the job markets are shrinking because AI is starting to replace all these entry-level jobs in different sorts of capacities, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think that's actually the real worry for them. It's not, I don't think it's so much about whether they want to turn their back on AI. It's that AI has basically taken the shirt off their back.
No, well, it's interesting you say that because the actual figures are that unemployment in America for recent graduates sits at 42%, which is the highest since 2020. And the unemployment rate for recent college graduates hit 5.7 just in the last quarter. So there is a problem there. You're absolutely right that there are definitely areas where junior hiring has fallen.
Yes, well, it's going to be something to watch because I think it'll bleed. I think if we just step back from the generation thing for a moment, I think we're going to see the level of entry jobs eroding across all sectors for all age groups, actually. It probably doesn't matter what age you are. If you're trying to go in at entry level, that's the tricky part that AI is effectively eating.
Yeah, and what does that entry level do, Justin? I mean, those are jobs that teach you skills, they teach you how to think, they teach you how to deal in a workplace that you haven't been in before, they do teach you accountability, and then eventually you can move up from that bottom rung. But if you can't get in the lower rung, then that's a problem.
We're looking at a systemic or a system problem here, aren't we? Yeah, if you erode away the ability for the entry level job to exist, you are effectively stunting your capacity for mid tier and senior because that growth doesn't. Although it is quite amusing because Gen Z sort of thinks they can step in and already be senior. But let's just say the reality is Gen's Z or any generation, if you can't get into the entry level, your ability to grow into that mid to senior is going to be problematic. So we're kind of creating a problem where once the other age groups age out, you won't have anything to fill it properly.
No.
So this is a bit of a throwback one because we've touched on AI in Hollywood quite a bit, and this latest news event, I suppose you could call it, is what I call Digital Val Kilmer. And so I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a new film coming out that has a digital Val Kilmer in it. So the film is called As Deep as the Grave, and it's apparently one he signed up to quite a few years back, but because of his ill health was never able to get to set.
No.
Now, my understanding is the directors, producers of the film decided to go ahead and make the movie anyway, thinking that his particular character may not be necessary.
Yes.
But when they came to finalizing the film and after shooting, they realized actually his role as the character in that was intended was actually still quite required.
Yeah.
So they went to the estate and to the family of Val Kilmer, and they agreed to a process by which they could get his likeness agreed to, and they've now created digital Val Kilmer.
Yeah, it's not actually the first time they did it with him because of his cancer problem. They did actually use his voice, altered his voice in the last Top Gun. So while they've done it again with his voice, they have done that before. But this is the new trailer is out, and it is definitely showing how Hollywood can use this technology with dead actors.
Yeah, because writer-director Corteva has said in an interview, we are 100% confident it's really the right move with this specific film, and we're really, really looking forward to everyone being able to judge it for themselves. But of course, there's already some moral panic and, hands in the air screaming from people about how awful it is or it's terrible. I mean, I can't help but like we've touched with our AI in Hollywood areas before that this isn't just the usual moral panic around threats to jobs and changes to the way it works. And, the reality is that the digitization and digital versions of dead actors has become more sophisticated with the generative AI capabilities. And we've touched on how this was always going to be something we claimed back 2 years ago or a year ago that this type of thing was coming and it was going to become prolific.
Yes.
It is probably the future way of how things will be done. And we know, for instance, that Bruce Willis, before his complete loss of his aphasia that's affected him, signed over his entire digital existence or the digital rights of himself.
Yes.
So at some point in the future, a digital Bruce Willis will also be possible. He did that of his own volition before he died. Some people are concerned, and there was a great quote in here said that people die are meant to be dead for a reason or something. Like, in other words, once you're dead, you should be dead. But we've kind of moved beyond that, and that's obviously opened up another kettle of fish around the whole issue of, life after death digitally, effectively. Digital afterlives is this whole burdening new area. So it crosses a few things, but the reality simply is that it is here. The technology is capable.
Yes.
You have willing parties to want to do it.
Yes.
Hollywood's going to have to just get over it and get on with it.
Well, don't forget this was a strike with actors and
It was, right. The SAG-AFTRA concern.
this. But, Justin, we've covered this in previous times also. We've covered the music industry where now people are creating, not only imagining people, but they're also recreating the Michael Jackson's new hits and so forth. So some of it works, some of it doesn't work. And in the end, it's got to be the audience. If the audience goes to this and says,
That's true.
He's got 10 fingers on each hand and it all doesn't work.
He should have 10 fingers. You mean 11 or 12?
Well, 11 or 12. I talk about each hand.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be a very sausage fest, that is, isn't it? Like,
if the digital replica is a joke, then they're not going to come back for more till they get it right.
I think you've nailed it. It's all going to come down to audience acceptance. If audiences are prepared to watch stories with digital maquette puppet actors that are dead or alive or digitized, that's where it all lies. At the end of the day, this is probably one of the biggest critiques of Hollywood, especially, is it's less about the art and more about the money. They have it's an economic engine and a huge industry of that. And if the audiences are turning up in whatever is modern day digitized audiences, then they're gonna keep doing it.
Yes.